Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here with YoVideogames and back with another review on the new review format for YoVideogames. So today we're going to be taking a look at Shantae and the 7 waifus. I mean Sirens. You know what I mean. So, recently, WayForward came out with the full release of Shantae and the 7 Sirens, which is the 5th Shantae game that's officially released. And you might be puzzling, I thought I saw this game coming out last year. Well, let me clear the confusion. So, Shantae and the 7 Sirens originally had the first portion of it come out near the launch of the Apple Arcade platform, but it would have console releases to follow, which happened in May of this year. So here we are now, where Apple Arcade has parts 1 and 2 available, and the consoles basically get the full release just much later. So how does it hold up as far as Shantae, as far as a Monster Boy or Metroidvania light? Well, pretty damn well, which is kind of par of the course for Shantae if you've been following the series for a while. Started on the Game Boy Color and then moved on to the Game Boy Advance, but through the DSiWare shop, and then of course with the Pirate's Curse and Half Genie Hero as sort of indie platform releases, kind of available for everything. And then of course, here we are today with Shantae and the 7 Sirens. So, how does it all stack up? Well, graphically, obviously you're going to look at it and say, hey, this is pretty damn close to Half Genie Hero, and you'd be right. And yeah, it still follows the same sort of basic formula. One of the kind of interesting things about Shantae, in a way, is that it has similarities to Metroidvania and a lot of similarities to Monster Boy, but it's never really settled completely down on one specific area. The first game is kind of almost Zelda 2-esque, almost, but still very much a Monster Boy game, and then Shantae Risky's Revenge is definitely a very classic-style Metroidvania-style game. Pirate's Curse is not quite Metroidvania, but kind of. It's segmented, where you basically choose different areas of the map from a ship that you navigate, and you just kind of like choose it, almost level-based style. And then Half Genie Hero kind of delves even further into the level-based structure with that, where it's kind of large level-based areas that you kind of go in and out of and sort of progress through them in a semi-linear fashion. And then how does 7 Sirens stack up? Well, it actually goes back to, I would say, Risky's Revenge. This game, in a nutshell, is very much a sort of HD, hand-drawn, glorified style of Risky's Revenge, which is more pure Metroidvania, probably the most pure Metroidvania there is. And that's probably a good thing for a lot of people who really enjoy that. General sort of consensus amongst the Shantae faithful is that Pirate's Curse is the best one. So this game is not necessarily structured like that one, but it's pretty darn close. And again, it's more of the second outing that it mostly apes, if it was going to ape any of the other ones, I would say. So how does it all stack up in the end, though? Well, let's just get right down to it. It is a gorgeous-looking game. Of course, it brings back the sort of hand-drawn aesthetic. Even going so far as this time, the backgrounds are all hand-drawn as well. There's no 3D objects. There's no 2.5D. The game is sort of technically 2.5D, whatever you want to call it, but it actually goes for a full hand-drawn aesthetic, which I actually kind of like. I think it fits the sort of tone and atmosphere and world the best, other than, of course, just general, beautiful 16/32-bit sprites that you got on the DSi. But, it's definitely in that vein of like, okay, this definitely feels the most appropriate for the character. It definitely avoids looking, sort of bland and blah like Mighty Number 9. Definitely nothing like that. Even goes so far as to say, I would probably say it looks a little better than DuckTales Remastered. At least it's a little more cohesive, because DuckTales Remastered had 3D backgrounds and 3D objects, where Shantae is just kind of like, nah, it's all kind of hand-drawn. Or at least, technically everything's made by hand, but you get what I'm saying. It definitely has a more hand-drawn look to it. So I actually appreciate the sort of background work being kind of like in the same sort of focus and tone of the foreground and sprite-based characters, or they're not really sprites, but you get what I mean. I'm saying that a lot. Anyways, musically, it's still a bopper, although this time it has a new musical composer, which, definitely doesn't seem to hinder it too much. You're still going to be tapping your toes to this game. And as far as the overall sort of, I guess, world or size, it's not too big. It's big enough, basically. It's just big enough to be worth the asking price, but it's not, say, Symphony of the Night or Bloodstained Castle like ginormous. So it's definitely not Hollow Knight big. You're not getting something like that here. And I think the other thing, sort of following up with that, is that this game is a lot more on the easier side. That's kind of like I know that can be a big thing for some people. I'm not really generally a fan of a game being hard just to be hard, but if you really value challenge in your games, there's ways to make this challenging, but and you unlock a hard mode after beating it, but it's like, as far as general overall challenge go, it's really not that bad. It's kind of like on the easy side. Enemies will drop hearts, which you can use to replenish life, and then upgrades to your attack and defense can be purchased, and you get that from jewels that enemies drop, and there are many easy ways to get a lot of money really fast. So yeah, with just a little tiny bit of optimization, you can pretty much make this game pretty easy to go through. The enemies, that's not to say the bosses are cakewalks. They actually have a lot of HP in a lot of the bosses, and they are sponges, so you might want to get those upgrades and extra attacks going real quick. But either way, like, this is not a game that's going to bust your balls. It's definitely, even as far as Shantae games go, I found it easier than some of the other entries, notably easier than, say, Pirate's Curse. Even the last, especially the last boss there. I think the last boss in Pirate's Curse is probably the hardest last boss in a Shantae game. So the last boss here is fun looking, but it's not super duper challenging. But either way, just know that this game is definitely, it's bigger than, of course, say, Risky's Revenge. It's probably close to Pirate's Curse as far as size goes. I'm not actually sure the dimension of the map. It's just, this is not a game like Hollow Knight where you're going to be spending just hours wondering where the hell do I go, because there's pretty defined areas, and there's only so many spaces to move around in before you can just get eternally lost like in that game. So yeah, it's a little bit on the lighter side as far as map and goes, and definitely a little bit easier as far as challenge goes, which I think is fair enough, because you look at a game like Shantae, and I don't really sit there and think, okay, I need something that's going to make me weep. It's just not that game. It's a game that's meant to be fun and accessible, and it really is. As far as the power-ups and everything goes, because that's kind of like the other meat and potatoes of Shantae, is besides okay, how does it play Metroidvania, or is it level-based? Well, it's Metroidvania this time. And then how are the power-up mechanics? Actually, they're pretty good. I would say it's a little frustrating, not frustrating, but it's a little kind of disappointing in a way that the double and / triple jump, which you get at the same time, comes so late in the game, although you get an air dash very early on, so that's pretty cool. The abilities are good. They make sense. It probably not quite as fun per se as Pirate's Curse, although they do add some of those abilities. You definitely see the roots of them here, or followed through here. So it's definitely an easy whimsical game to get through. The power-ups are pretty good generally for the most part. They make sense. You'll come across areas in the world where you'll notice something, and then the character may even comment on it, but you just know that, okay, this is something for later. I'll come back with a power-up, something that needs to be electrocuted, or something that needs to have something else done to it. So it all just kind of makes sense. It flows very well. There's nothing really too confusing in the game, so that's actually a good thing. You're not going to be hopelessly lost with no indicators. So yeah, as far as all that goes, I think the power-ups are definitely good. I think the level design and structure is good. I think it's better than Half Genie Hero. I mean, at the end of the day, probably the big question is sort of, is this better than Half Genie Hero? I would say yes. I like the singular large map design of it. I like the power-ups here. I think everything flows really well. As far as story goes, it's fine. It's got a little bit of teasing to maybe what the future might bring, but if you're looking for something probably as surprisingly good as Pirate's Curse was, you're not getting it here. Which is a little disappointing that the Shantae series seems to have such a promising push forward in narrative with that game, and then ever since it's been sort of scaled back to sort of these cute, bubbly one-offs, and this game's kind of in that same vein. I do like the twists and turns that happen here. They are fun. The characters are fun. There's a animated intro by Studio Trigger, which I know is probably going to get a lot of people excited. And then Studio Yoda, and I believe one other studio, did a lot of in-game cutscenes. So there's actually a fairly decent amount of animation. I think every boss battle you gets its own unique little animated intro. Pretty dope, actually. I think it looks good, and it fits the tone and narrative really well. I think they're really solid additions to it. So This is just one of those games that's fun, cute, light, bubbly, and totally worth your time. As long as you enjoy games that aren't going to break your thumbs difficulty. If you can enjoy a Metroidvania that's just a breezy good time, like an island vacation, like it's based on, I think this is totally worth it for you guys. As far as critical rating I would go, I'd probably give this game about an 8. It's not super long. There's not a ton of things you unlock even when after beating the game. So it's definitely again on the easier, lighter side, and just not super long as far as that goes. And it's probably not not the best Shantae experience, if I was being completely honest, but it's pretty damn close. It's kind of all within that same general vein, where it's just like, all the Shantae games are always sort of like these 8 or 9 out of 10 games, and this game's no different. I think it's on the higher end. I would say it's probably definitely within, maybe top 2, probably top 2 or 3, my second or third favorite one. And that leads, of course, into the personal rating. I'd probably personally give this about a 9. I kind of liked everything about it. I thought it flowed really well, controlled really well. I enjoyed generally everything that was going on. I appreciated having a game that's not, a ball buster. There's another gameplay mechanic I haven't mentioned yet, which is the enemy cards. It's exactly like the Souls thing in Area of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow, where like after defeating enemies, sometimes they drop cards of themselves, and those cards give you little abilities that you can stack and equip that just give you like, oh, this lets you crawl faster, this lets you climb faster, this lets you hurt more enemies more. So I like the enemy card aspect of it. I really like the setting. I like the atmosphere. There doesn't seem to be there's no section of this game world that feels, oh, I don't want to go here. There's no Norfair, just, oh god, lava everywhere. There's no awful area of the map, which I really generally appreciate. So I think on a personal level, this is more of a 9, and again, critically, it's about an 8. Overall, I think if you enjoy Monster Boy, if you enjoy Monster World, if you enjoy the Metroidvania, Castlevania games, if you liked Bloodstained, this is definitely right up your alley. If you liked Hollow Knight, I'd still say give it a whirl. It's nowhere near as challenging or as large as that game, but I still think it's definitely worth your time and a look, as long as you're aware that, hey, this is just not as long and it's just not as hard as that game, but it's still totally a fun experience. So I think it's a joy. I think it's a blast. It's kind of flying a little bit under the radar with all the crazy gaming news and all the big releases. Why they decided to release this game on the same day as Xenoblade is like torture for me. But here we are. I did beat it. I did enjoy it. I would recommend it. I'd play it again. So that's my review of Shantae and the 7 Sirens. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know what other games you'd like to see me review down in the comments below, and I will see you on the channel. Later, dudes.